start here. Welcome back to the Lurie Daniel Favors show on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. The clip that Urban View just heard, YouTube and Instagram, you guys did not hear it, but that was a clip of one Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is the apartheid billionaire bro who funded J.D. Vance, who is also a part of the PayPal mafia, and one of the folks who has helped to create this organization called Palantir. I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, but Palantir is the name of the organization. And today's live is basically called, "It Feels Like Somebody's Watching Me." Oh, snap, it's elongated muskrat. Pay attention, because I'm going to start by talking about what the Doge boys are doing to one really important organization, an agency known as the National Labor Relations Board. This is the board that basically is responsible for administering disputes that you might have if you're trying to organize. They manage collective bargaining issues. Basically, this is where unions are able to get justice, right? Or where employers are able to, depending on who's in president, are basically able to wield the power of being employers and make sure that unions don't get justice. So the National Labor Relations Board, that is the agency, very important agency. And the Doja them boys have their sights on this agency. Why? Well, because like many of the agencies that elongated muskrat has attacked with the Doge system, NLRB has been investigating a lot of complaints coming out of Tesla, and I believe also coming out of SpaceX. There's a number of corporate of entities that elongated muskrat owns that have been the subject of a lot of labor relations disputes. Before, I believe this was during Donald Trump's first term, there was a whole lot of concerns about the racism that particularly Black engineers were experiencing at Tesla, and they were winning. And so the National Labor Relations Board, obviously being one of the agencies that is helping to regulate what elongated muskrat is doing, is in the bullseye sights of elongated muskrat and the Doja boys. But here's why all of that matters. Now we're going to start talking about the National Labor Relations Board, but we're going to end with how they're doing the exact same thing at the NLRB to you Instagram, and YouTube, and all of you in Urban View, which includes me. Okay, so let's get into it. This is a little scary, but scaring is caring. And so welcome to my world. I have to learn these things and read this information, and I consume the news. So now I'm sharing it all with you because I love you. All right. So whistleblower, there's an NPR story where it's called "Whistleblower Details How Doge May Have Taken Sensitive NLRB Data," National Labor Relations Board data. According to NPR, which has done a phenomenal deep dive into this, as well as a number of articles that we're going to be drawing from today, in the first days of March, there were a team of folks from Doge who went to the National Labor Relations Board. And this is an agency that, again, it investigates and adjudicates complaints about labor practices that are alleged to be unfair or disproportionately discriminatory. And in the National Labor Relations Board, they store a lot of data. Because it's basically confidential information about employees who are filing complaints, proprietary business information about the corporations that are part of the cases that the National Labor Relations Board is investigating, or the complaints that have been filed. According to the report, Doge employees basically set their sights on the NLRB's internal systems, and they essentially said that their overall mission is to review agency data for compliance with the administration's policies to cut costs and maximize efficiency. Keep in mind, they have not cut any costs. Costs for the federal government have actually increased this year as compared to last year, which means Doge has failed at its job, because we are not surprised. They are a white, entitled, and competent-led agency. They're led by WEIs who have some skills, yes, but essentially are very bad at governing, which is what they're supposed to be doing. According to an official whistleblower disclosure, which was also shared with Congress and other federal oversight agencies, and this was all obtained by NPR, there are a number of interviews that they engage in. This is a well-sourced article, so we're not talking about, rumors. So I know it feels like somebody's watching me. It's not like the song. It's more than that. And it's important because, again, everything that they're doing at NLRB, they're also doing to you. According to the disclosure and the internal communications, members of Doge asked that their activities, what they were doing at the back ends of these systems, because remember, these are tech bros. They don't know anything about labor relations law. They're tech bros. And so they basically installed tech systems, which I don't actually know the official names of because I'm not a tech bro or a tech girl, but they basically installed these systems that showed that that prevented the activities they were engaging in from being logged in the system. Basically, they went into the system. They kind of implemented, I don't want to call it a virus, But if gathering information that you're not supposed to have could be called a virus, then they basically infected the NLRB systems with this data gathering virus that would also allow them to hide what they did. Why you hiding what you doing, Doji? But they did that. That's exactly what they did. They went in and they put in these monitoring tools that would basically prevent the actual monitoring tools from being able to catch them. They were able to manually delete records of their access. Very, quote, evasive behavior that several cybersecurity experts interviewed by NPR compared to what criminal or state-sponsored hackers might do. Is it my turn to remind you all that some of the Doja boys were also a part of Russian hacking teams? And that's one of the reasons why they had been fired from previous jobs. That's weird. But let me be the first to remind you if you haven't heard that bit of news today, because remember, that's what had happened. What had happened was the Doja Den boys have been working for Elongated Muskrat, some of them for a very long time. Many of them have these allegations swirling around them that they were also a part of international hacking crime sprees and rings. Take it up with the debates. Take it up with the reporters. I'm just telling you what the report said. According to NPR, employees at the NLRB, because remember, what they do in the NLRB, they're also doing to you. We're going to get to that in a minute. Employees at the NLRB were very concerned that confidential data could also be exposed, particularly, here's a direct quote, after they started detecting suspicious login attempts from an IP address in Russia. Why is a mysterious IP address in Russia accessing information and data from the United States National Labor Relations Board? Isn't this weird? Am I the only one that thinks this is weird? Well, a lot of people actually thought it was weird, which is why we have whistleblowers. And thank God the whistleblower protection statutes are still technically in place, although God protect these whistleblowers, because apparently sometimes when you blow the whistle against some companies like Boeing, you mysteriously are unalived. Weird how those stories came and went, and not a whole lot of people paid attention to it. But moving on, according to the reports, after this mysterious IP address in Russia was trying to get access to the information, the IT department launched a formal review. Because they're like, wait a minute, here come Doja boys. They came in, they inserted all of this stuff into the databases, and they were requesting the types of access to information that nobody, nowhere was supposed to have. God level access is what one of the whistleblowers called it. Doja and them boys went in, they said, we don't just want to know the base level stuff. We don't want to just know the mid-level stuff. We want access to everything. Everything. Now, what does having access to information from the National Labor Relations Board have to do with cutting costs? Have to do with efficiency, particularly since Doge has demonstrated they neither cut costs nor are very efficient. It's weird. It's weird. But it wasn't just weird to people like me who are concerned about this. The employees at the NLRB were very concerned that, quote, confidential data could be exposed, particularly, again, after those IP addresses, but also they began that there was a lot, they believed that there was a lot of suspicious activity that warranted further investigation from agencies like CISA, which stands for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or the FBI. They called in the feds because this was bad. They could tell this was bad. They knew it was bad. And they also knew they could not stop it. Because once you have God level access to the data, you're God as it pertains to the universe that data lives in. And if you want to hide what you did or protect the information that you took, then you would be able to do that. Now, another thing we got to ask ourselves is, why would you need to take data? Because it wasn't just that they were reviewing data, y'all, they were extracting the data and they didn't put it back. And we don't know that even if they did, they put it back correctly without manipulations. Notwithstanding some of the concerns, the whistleblowers disclosed to Congress that people who were part of Doge were getting access to forensic data and records of conversations with colleagues that provided evidence of their access and the capacity that they were using to basically steal data and information. According to the report, hold on, let me get to this. 11 sources directly familiar with internal operations in federal agencies have serious concerns about what's happening, and some of them have seen evidence that Doge is exfiltrating sensitive data for unknown reasons. It's so weird that this man, who is the richest man on earth on paper, who is getting access to security systems and who has sets up satellites that all governments need access to in order to communicate. It's so weird that his agency is the one that's stealing all sorts of data that his corporations need and benefit from. And we're not supposed to wonder why. We're not supposed to wonder why. We have people who are a part of Doge who basically did some of the following. The day that they got there, the first week of March, Several of the employees at the NLRB saw a black SUV and a police escort enter the garage, after which building security lets in the Doja Boys. They interacted with a small number of staffers. They never introduced themselves to the team. The IT team that's working there is told by their colleagues that Doge employees, again, demanded that God level access, and they basically created systems that would fail to log their activity. So basically, if you're working in cybersecurity, you're supposed to be able to, everything you do on that system, everything you do in the computer, I should be able to see it if I'm a part of the cybersecurity team, because that's how we make sure the security of the information is maintained. Remember a couple of months ago when I said something to the effect of one of my biggest fears with Doge was that we have a geriatric level of leadership in Congress and in the House and in the Senate, people who native language is boomer talk, not necessarily computer talk. And this is no shade to boomer age people. It is to say, however, when you are not a digital native, when you do not have access to digital information, when you do not grow up when you are not coming out of your mother's vagina with an iPhone in your hand, you're not going to speak the same language and have the same level of credibility and understanding as to what's happening here. People who are native digital users realize what's going on. And when you have a Congress, when you have a House and a Senate that is populated with people who are too removed from this reality to understand with the level of expertise that they need, that's a problem. Because as I said months ago, once Doge comes in, how is our Congress going to know what they actually did? Our Congress can't even properly regulate social media apps. This is going to be an issue. And it really is an issue. According to one of the whistleblowers, this was a huge red flag. The failure to log activity is a cardinal sin and contradicts best practices as recommended by the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, as well as the FBI and the National Security Agency. Everything that Doge and them did with an NLRB violates all of those principles, violates all of those rules. What they need that data for, though? What they need it for? The forensic digital records, says the report, are important for record-keeping requirements, and they allow for troubleshooting, but they also allow experts to investigate potential data breaches, something that is extremely important because it will even allow them to trace the attacker's path back to the vulnerability that let them inside the network. We're talking about cybersecurity experts who are concerned that Doge is presenting the same sort of risk that would typically, if this were something being done by a foreign nation, would constitute perhaps acts of war. This is weird. A couple of days after Doge arrives, as the report continues, a whistleblower saw something else that alarmed them while they were browsing over the internet. MIT graduate and Doge engineer Jordan Wick had been sharing information about coding products he was working on to a public account with GitHub, which is a website that will allow developers to create, store, and collaborate on code. So here we have this boy who working for Doge, who graduated from MIT. And MIT, like schools that create people who can do this, y'all really got to work on your ethics. Like, you got to work on your ethics because something is wrong with the people that you're turning out into. Not all of them. We love MIT graduates. Shout out to the medicine. It's a lot of MIT folks in there, but something about the ethics that y'all are not teaching is allowing people to do shit like this. Basically, Jordan Wick, he is an MIT grad, works for Doge, and he has been sharing information that he's getting from the NLRB on a public account where other developers are able to take that information, create, store, and collaborate on code. After journalist Roger Stolenberger, this is according to the report, posted about the account, one of the whistleblowers notices that something Jordan Wick was working on that was called NX Gen BDOR extract. Basically, I don't know a whole lot about what that means, but from the report, it basically means this is a backdoor into systems that you weren't even supposed to have a front door into. And it allows them to extract data that they were not supposed to have and do what with it? We don't know, but we do know that this boy, Jordan Wick, is basically sharing this information with other developers. Did they pass security clearances? Did anybody look up their information and find out who they are? According to the whistleblower, that when they realized that they were working on this backdoor tool, the whistleblower says, when I saw this tool, I immediately panicked. Just for lack of a better term, I kind of had a conniption and said, whoa, 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 whoa. He alerts his entire team because basically this use of this backdoor to extract files from the internal case management system is going to explosively provide access to information that ain't nobody else supposed to have. Ain't nobody else supposed to have it. And some of the concerns that they have is that when you're looking at the data that they're getting, if you're a corporation, if you're a corporate entity, you want this data. Not only do you want data on the people who are organizing so that you can get access to which employees are doing low level and even mid and upper level union organizing, but you also want to know trade secrets. You also want to know which corporations have access to which information. You also want to know everything you can, because if you are a corporation, say like Palantir, which was founded by, who was it again? Peter Thiel, the South African apartheid billionaire, bro. And what was that clip that we just heard him talk about with Palantir? That they basically gather information, they gather data, and make more meaningful use of it for security systems for governments and corporate private entities. What they doing with our information? Harpo, who this woman? What they doing with this information and with this data? The article is extensive, and it goes on to talk about the fact that Doge engineers also installed a container, which is, quote, an opaque virtual computer that can run programs on a machine without revealing its activities to the rest of the network. Y'all, they went in there with spooks. They went in there with ghosts. They went in there with the information to basically look at you and see what's happening without you even knowing about it. Oh, wait, they did that for the NLRB. But now let's talk about how this is also mimicking what's happening when it comes to our personal and private data. The article we're going to tweet out, but they also include this cartoon that explains this entire scenario according to the following way. They say, let's think about the National Labor Relations Board as a post office. The data systems are like different mailboxes with their own addresses, and the people with official access to them are like post workers. Doge gave itself access to the whole building, but the Privacy Act laws are supposed to prevent it from copying the mail that you got in your mailbox. While Doge had that access, however, somebody put in a copy machine basically into that system and was able to copy that data and carry it away without anybody who is supposed to have that data knowing why. But that's what they're doing at the NLRB. The New York Times, in an article called "Trump Wants to Merge Government Data, Here Are 314 Things It Might Know About You," we realize they're not just doing this for the NLRB. They're doing it to all of us. There is such a combination of data that the federal government has about us, but it's kept intentionally separate. About 50 years ago, when the government was recognizing that data gathering was going to be much more computerized, they put some protections in place because their sense and their fear was, and this was a fear that many in the Republican Party had, their sense and their fear was that if you allow the government to have access to all of this combined data instead of keeping the data separate, that allows for a surveillance state. That allows for them to be able to see what you do. And remember, Republicans traditionally did not like this idea of a surveillance state. Here are some of the pieces of information that is held about all of us in disparate parts of the government: your active duty military service, your adjusted gross income, your adopted child's name, adverse credit history, charitable contributions, country of birth, citizenship, your credit card and debit card numbers, your criminal history, date of birth, date of hire, your social security number, your dependent social security numbers, your employer's name, your employment termination dates, your farm income or loss, your foreign business partners, your full name, your high school, your IP address, your marital status, your marriage certificate, your personal bank account numbers, your email address, personal and corporate, your place of birth, your prior status in foster care, the reason for separation. They got everything. But not every agency has access to all that information. Agencies are supposed to operate by a rule that basically says you get as much information as you need to be effective at your job and no more. That's it. That's all you get. And that was intentionally put in place so that you would not have, say, a corporation like Palantir or a national a country. I was going to say a country that might have nefarious intentions towards you, like, say, Russia, so that they would not be able to have access to all of the information about all American people in one fell swoop. They put preventative measures in place that the Doge boys, just basically through the example we just saw at the NLRB, basically were able to completely blow past because the NLRB doesn't have the capacity to compete with apartheid tech bros. And now we all know about it. But there's more. So the Trump administration is basically trying to undo those blocks, the tools that were put into place to prevent the complete gathering of all our information, the Trump administration, according to the New York Times, is now trying to connect the dots of that disparate information. Last month, Donald Trump signed an executive order calling for, in contravention of the decades of history and practices and rules that prevented this, he issued an executive order calling for the consolidation of these segregated records, raising the prospect of creating a kind of data trove about Americans that the government has never had before and that members of the president's own party have historically opposed. This effort is being driven by elongated muskrat and his lieutenants in the Department of Government Efficiency. They have basically gone through dozens of databases and they are consolidating all of this data and creating a Frankenstein of data information that groups like Palantir would be really interested in having, really interested in using. And one of the reasons we're concerned about this is because we see what they're doing with data. Today, we get a report from 404 Media called ICE just paid Palantir tens of millions of dollars for complete target analysis of known populations. Palantir makes a lot of money consolidating data and creating creating very useful data sets of information that basically, you remember when Kanye was like, no one man should have all that power. No one corporation should have all this information. No one corporation should have all of this data. And this is one of the reasons why people are now raising the alarm. According to the report, last week, ICE paid, and for me, again, ICE is the SS, ICE is the Gestapo, ICE is like slave catchers. But ICE paid contracting giant Palantir because, Palantir, which was created by Peter Thiel and the Apartheid billionaire boys, one of their main clients is the CIA. One of their main clients is the American defense apparatus and system. And oh, look at us living in a country where this is what's happening right now. But basically, they paid contracting giant Palantir tens of millions of dollars to make modifications to a powerful ICE database and search tool to allow complete target analysis of known populations. I know we ain't necessarily on ICE lists yet, but we are part of the known population that they're getting access to. The records show that Palantir is actively working on and making updates to the technical infrastructure underpinning the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts. The news comes after ICE agents arrested green card holding students at his interview to become a U.S. citizen. It's been weird how they've been able to pinpoint who it is that they're going after. And it's weird only until we realize, oh, they got information about all of the data points around you from this governmental effort from elongated muskrat and the Doji boys to consolidate data that for decades has had intentional blocks put up to prevent that sort of consolidation. What do you think a corporate entity would do if they had access to every bit of information about you? Think about that. Think about all the data we give away just on being on social media. Think about all of the ways a corporation could target you, could advertise to you, could market to you, could steal from you, right? If they had access to all of your information. Think about what a group of pre or post-pubescent Doji boys who have already had histories linking them to international hacking rings. Think about what they might be able to do with your data. Think about what they might be able to do. And somebody on what you call it says, I have stock in Planeteer. I hope it goes up. Yeah, I hope it goes up too. And when the world blows up, you and your stocks can stroke yourself and then figure out how you can find joy. This is and again, this is an example of the short-sighted stupidity of many American people. To this commenter, you are a short-sighted, stupid person, because that sort of belief that you're going to just make money off of this entity that is predatorily capturing our data and information, you're stupid. And you're part of the problem, part of the reason that we're dealing with all of this right now. So we're in a time where, just to sum it up, this agency, Doji, is blowing through organizations, blowing through agencies, gathering data, using every bit of information that they can, stealing the data, sending the data to places in Russia. What might Russia want to know about your student loan situation? Why Russia need to know your termination dates and your hire dates and your social security number and your access to benefits? Why they got to know all that information? They don't, unless this is a part of an international espionage or some other reason I don't know, because I'm not them. And at this point, I'm reading reports and trying to make best assessments as I possibly can. According to the cybersecurity experts, the spike in data that was leaving the system is a key indicator of breach, because, again, it wasn't just that Russian IP addresses were trying to get into the data. There was also extraction of data that was being directly sent to Russia. Why? Cybersecurity experts say that spike in data is a key indicator of a breach. We are under assault right now, says the whistleblowers. We are under assault. The IT team for the NLRB, it says they met to discuss the insider threats. The Doge engineers whose activities had little insight, into or control over. They said, quote, we had no idea what they did. And that's the fear. You've got these teenage boys, these grown men absconding with our data, sending it to foreign adversaries, data about every single one of us. And if you look at this New York Times article, the data points that they gather, your academic rank, your areas of study, the net farm profit or loss, the nature of your medical service, whether or not your parents were killed in the line of duty, your Pell Grant status, your personal tax payment history, your prescription drug coverage, your principal business activity, your railroad retirement credits. What you need to know how many points I got on Amtrak for? Why you got to know that? Why you got to know that? So because we have no idea what all of this is about, but we do know that organizations like Palantir, as we just heard Peter Thiel say in that clip, they basically specialize in pulling together data. They specialize in pulling together data not for protected purposes. They pull together data for profit. They pull together data in order to make money spying on people. Why? That's the question I have. Why? What is this for? What are we to make of this? And why is it that nobody seems to be able to figure out what's happening except the whistleblowers who are coming to Congress, a Congress led by Republicans that basically have demonstrated they don't really give a damn. But when the people who are put into place who tell you what's happening and they tell you this is very bad, and we find out that what's very bad is that Doge is basically stealing sensitive data, not just from NLRB, not just from Social Security, not just from the Department of Health and Human Services, not just from those agencies, but from your personal lives. These are things we have to be concerned about. We have to be concerned about. We're going to go to commercial break. 866-801-8255. 86801-TALK is the number. 866-801-5. 866-801-TALK. Instagram, thank you. Someone says you're misinformed. That stock you have in pound. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they are misinformed. The stock they have in this organization, baby. Y'all figure it out on Instagram. Love y'all Instagram. Love y'all YouTube. Appreciate y'all. Urban View, 866-801-8255. Why? Why is this happening? What are they doing?